Hello. Now, my recent trip across Europe has prompted a number of you to get in touch and ask about the flight planning process. For example, Charlie has contacted me. He says, I'm a PPL holder in the south coast of England and I would really like to see a video on flight planning to go into Europe and the Channel Islands, including the people you need to speak to, such as customs, and submitting flight plans before flying and during a flight. Now, a flight plan is basically a digital text document that is sent to air traffic control, and it lets them know where you're departing, what route you're going to take, and where you're going to land. It also tells them where your alternate aerodromes are going to be, how many people are on board, and the equipment that you have in the aircraft, from communication equipment right down to whether you have life jackets and an emergency radio, for example. Now, flight plans are important when you're crossing over sparse areas or inhospitable terrain, or even over a large expanse of water, because should you end up having any difficulties and you have to make an emergency landing, air traffic control knew the route that you were intending to take, and that's where they will go looking for you if you don't arrive when they expect you to. There's also administrative reasons, of course, for letting air traffic control know if you plan to cross an international boundary. Now, the first thing that you really need to do if you're planning on filing a flight plan is take a look at the UK Flight Planning Guide. It's CAP 694. This video is just a taster for you. It is not a definitive guide. I can't vouch for the complete accuracy of all the information in it. If you really want to know what you need to do, you need to read the UK Flight Planning Guide, CAP 694, and it's something like 150 odd pages, I think, 120 pages. So there's a lot of information there, but it really is worth reading, and I always refer back to it when I'm filing a flight plan manually, because it is not an easy process, to be honest. There's lots of boxes to fill in. So let's take a look first at the flight planning form, which is the basic paper form that you will use if you're faxing it off to ATC. So here's that form here. It's in that document on the CAA website. You can download it elsewhere too. It's a standard document that's used all the way around the world, and it contains all the boxes for all the information that you are going to need to complete. It starts with the addresses at the top, and these are the air traffic control units that you're going to want to notify of your flight, which will include, if you're departing the UK aerodrome of departure, probably the central air traffic control addresses, and also the alternate aerodromes, the flight information regions for England, the flight information regions for where you're heading, and also the destination aerodrome. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about how you do the addresses because they're fairly complicated, but you can find details of the addresses that you need to send your flight plan to in that UK Flight Planning Guide. Now, the next boxes of note are here in the next area here, message type, aircraft identification, and so on. So aircraft identification, that's straightforward. That's your registration number. In my case, Golf Bravo Hotel Oscar Romeo. Next, you've got flight rules. So it will be I for IFR or V for VFR. Or if you're conducting a mixed flight rules flight, so if you perhaps start departing VFR but then you change to an IFR flight, you would put in either Y or Z, depending on whether you're starting IFR or starting VFR. So in the case of a flight that starts VFR, it will be Z. A case that starts IFR, it will be Y. The type of flight, well, in our case, that's G for general aviation. Then we go to type of aircraft. So then you have to put in the ICAO code for your aircraft type. In my case, it is Papa 28 Alpha. Wake turbulence category, in my case, it will be L for light. And then we've got equipment. And the equipment one is quite complicated. Now, the flight planning guide has got basically a breakdown of all the different codes that you can use in this section for equipment. You'd probably start with S, which is the standard prescribed equipment, communications, navigation, and approach aid equipment for the flight that you're conducting. And then you go down this list and you'd have a look, and I'd put in D for DME, I'd put in F for ADF, I might put in G for GNSS, I might put in L for ILS, I might put in O for VOR. I might put in, what else would I put in? I'd definitely put in Y, and this is for VHF with 8.33 kilohertz spacing capability, and that's important these days. You'll find often that you'll be denied access to airspace if you don't have that inserted in your flight plan. And then there's surveillance equipment, so depending on your type of transponder or whether you have ADS-B capability, there will be different codes for the different types of equipment that you're carrying. So you'd need to go through your aircraft and work out what equipment you're carrying and work out which letters you then need to insert in the equipment column. Departure aerodrome, well, that will be where you're leaving. The time will be your estimated off blocks time, the time that you will start manoeuvring on the apron with the intention of taking off. Your cruising speed, that will be indicated in knots. Your level will be either indicated in altitude or flight levels, and then the route. Your destination aerodrome, that's fairly straightforward. The total estimated en route time, so the flight that I'm actually planning right now is to Jersey, and I know it's 2 hours and 20 minutes. Alternate aerodrome, second alternate aerodrome, fairly straightforward. Endurance, that's how much fuel you've got on board, how long that will allow you to fly for, the person's on board. And then we come to the emergency section, so whether you've got an emergency radio, whether you're carrying dinghies, whether you have life jackets, so on and so forth. The aircraft colour and markings, that's important, so that search and rescue can identify you from the air if they need to find you, and the pilot in command. So that's basically the paper form. As I say, I'm not going into it in detail because there is masses to say about this, and I am not an expert. And you'll see why I find it difficult to cope with a form like this in a minute, because I tend to do it the easy way. Next, we're going to look at AFPEX, which is the UK flight planning system. You can register for this if you're a UK general aviation pilot. It's free to register. I'll put a link in the description of where you need to go to do that. You'll need your pilot's license details and so on, so they can verify you against the CAA licensing list, of course. So here is AFPEX, and it runs on laptops and computers. It doesn't run on iPads and tablets, unfortunately, as far as I'm aware. There may be hacks to make it work that way, but it works on a Java program, and so it's not exactly ideal if you're obviously traveling in the plane and you need to file a flight plan or delay a flight plan. You're going to have to pull out your laptop, you're going to have to find a connection to the internet and do it that way, which is why tablets really are the way forward, and we'll come on to tablet filing shortly. But this is AFPEX, and some people still prefer to use this because it gives you an acknowledgement of your flight plan. If there are any difficulties with your flight plan, I think it sends you messages to let you know. And you've got more variability, more control over your flight plans. So perhaps if you're doing a mixed flight plan, such as a VFR to IFR or IFR to VFR, I would be using AFPEX for that, because I can insert the details manually of at which point I'm going to change my flight rules to IFR, for example. So here is the opening screen, and it all looks ever so complicated, and this isn't going to be a guide of how to use AFPEX, but it's just going to show you roughly how it works. So I'm going to go to FPL flight plan, and what you see here is a digital version of the paper flight plan form. It looks exactly the same, doesn't it? So we've got our addresses up the top here. The originator, that's my identification there. So we're just going to go through it and enter the information on here. So there's my registration number, flight rules V, type of flight G, that's correct, type of aircraft P28 Alpha. And as you can see, it's got crosses next to the sections that I need to fill in. Wake turbulence light, that's already in there. Equipment. Now I told you that equipment list is specific to your aircraft. I've already gone through that list. I know what my equipment is, so I'm inserting that in here. So this code basically tells them what I'm carrying: DME, standard VOR, COM, Y for 8.33 kilohertz spacing, I think SB1 has something to do with the ADSB out. Okay, so as I say, you're going to need to fill that in for your specific aircraft. Don't copy what I've put in there because it will depend on what your aircraft is, of course. So we're departing EGKR, which is Red Hill. The time is going to be 0930. That's obviously in Zulu time. The speed will be knots 100. The altitude. Now we can put in here VFR if we're not certain what our altitude is going to be, but you might want to put in your expected cruise altitude. So I'm putting in flight level 080. And then we come down to the route. We're going to go direct, DCT, and we're going to go, say we're going to waypoint Oddvik, then direct LZD. So that's our route there. I'm then going to put in the code for Jersey. Total estimated time en route is 0220. My alternate is going to be Cherbourg, which is LFRC. Now in this section here, section 18 other, we have to put in the date of flight. We also have to put in our estimate for the French FIR in our case, and this must go in here, and you enter it as such. So this is saying that I'm estimating at the French FIR 45 minutes after departure. So my endurance goes in here. We'll put in, I don't know, 3 hours and 30 minutes. Persons on board 3, and then we've got an emergency VHF radio, emergency locator transmitter. We haven't got any of that. We've got life jackets with a light fluorescent. We have a UHF, we have a VHF. Dinghies 0, so we cross that out. Colour and markings, we are white, blue and red. And you'll see up here that because of the route that we've inserted, it's automatically picked the addresses that it wants to go to. Now you might want to check that those addresses are correct, have a look at the flight planning guide, make sure you haven't missed any out, but certainly check to make sure that you have got your departure aerodrome and your arrival aerodrome in there. You then hit send and off it goes, and you get an acknowledgement or it gets rejected or whatever. But that's basically how you fill it in on AFPEX. Now there is a far easier way to do this, of course, and that involves your tablet. And we're going to go to Skydemon, and here is my flight that I've popped in for my flight from Red Hill to Jersey. And then if you go to the warnings tab here at the top, you click on warnings, it tells you here your journey crosses an international boundary, so a flight plan will probably need to be filed. Click on the spanner, and here we go. We're about to file our flight plan, and it's so easy. What you must have done in advance of this though is set up your aircraft profile. You must have put in how much fuel you've got. You must have done your weight and balance, so it inserts the number of passengers that you have. And you must, in your aircraft profile, put in its colour, the equipment that you've got on board, and then it will populate the equipment list. As you can see here, equipment, it's got in that code of all the equipment that I've got on board. We're departing from Red Hill, we've got our time in there. There's our route that it's automatically put in for us. We haven't had to enter anything manually. It's taken it from the route that we've drawn on the map. We've got our destination. It's already worked out our time en route based on the weather conditions. It's got our alternate in there, and then some extra information. So it's automatically put in there for you the time that you're going to cross the FIR boundary at France. It's also put in my details. We've got our endurance in there, the people on board, and then our survival equipment. And that's it basically. Then you hit continue and send, and you're done. It's all done. You know, you don't have to do anything manually. It works out all the addresses that it needs to go to. You may need credits. I think with your Skydemon subscription, for example, you get a certain number of credits to begin with, but you may need to purchase more. Quick word about filing times for flight plans. Usually they like you to file them at least an hour in advance of your estimated off-blocks time. In exceptional circumstances, I think you can leave it till 30 minutes before your flight. So there you are. A flight planning guide in a nutshell. As I say, it's not an exhaustive video here looking at it in detail and all the different variables, but if you look at that document, the UK Flight Planning Guide, that will give you more information. I've just planned that flight to Jersey. I'm going to be conducting that in the next couple of days, and that will be a video that you'll be able to watch in future. Please hit subscribe so that you get notified of new videos. It really does help me. Hit like if you've liked the video as well. And if you'd like more information about me or want to sign up for my newsletter, which is free, for example, pop over to my website www.johnhunt.net. Thank you for watching. Fly safely, my friends.